Hi, I'm Tamara, and this is TELUS Talks with Tamara Taggart. Hi, everyone. Today, I'm super excited. I am speaking with Jen Harper. She's the founder of Cheekbone Beauty. You've probably heard of it. It's a cosmetics company that is dedicated to both sustainability and empowering Indigenous women and youth. The company was founded in 2016 and since then has donated over $100,000 to a wide variety of really important causes. Jen, thank you so much for being here. It's great to have you. I'm really excited for this conversation.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to talk to you too.
So Cheekbone Beauty, I mean the story behind it and why you started it is really important and it really, maybe you could share with us what pushed you to start this company.
Yeah, so not your typical entrance into the beauty industry at all. It's not like I was a makeup artist or even worked in beauty. I was actually in sales and marketing for a seafood company at the time. And I had, the reality is like my life prior to 2014 was kind of a mess. Like, not kind of, it really was. I'm being nice to myself there, but I was really battling with alcoholism. And what I now know, years of therapy, it's trauma, generational trauma. My grandmother, residential school survivor, my father was impacted by that. And so am I, and a lot of my siblings. And the more I learned about my history, the more eye opening it became. And I realized for many years of my life, even prior to those late years, since I was young, I always wanted to figure out how I could do something to support my community, my Indigenous community. And I never knew what that looked like. It was always this thing sort of in the back of my mind. Well, I get sober in November of 2014, and literally in January of 2015, have this dream. All of these Native little girls are covered in lip gloss. I literally jump out of bed that night and start writing out what I now know was the business plan. And I had no idea that that's what it was. And then spent the next almost 2 years in, just research and development, and really discovered that, okay, to get this off the ground, to prove and test the market, the cost was actually not going to be that high. We live just outside of Toronto, and there are a ton of cosmetic manufacturers in that area. And learning the whole concept of private label, which existed in the industry that I'd come from, food. So everything, a lot of items in our grocery store shelves, a lot of times are coming from the same manufacturers. It's just different branding on each product. And so beauty was exactly the same way. However, you really don't have a ton of control over packaging, and the packaging by I mean that is like the actual component that each product comes in. Generally, it's like that full service deal. Buy our cosmetics. We're going to put your logo on it. We'll even toss it on the box on the outside. This is the cost. And I knew it wasn't technically the way I wanted or what I saw the business or how I saw the business I wanted to create. But the reality was I didn't have a huge fund to start a business. I got a $500 check in 2016 from a organization called the Native Women's Association of Canada. I was entered in this 12-week entrepreneurial program. At the end, we didn't know they were giving out checks, but they had. And so I left that day and I was like, okay, now I went home and just said to my husband, I don't have an excuse. This is 500 bucks. I can at least register the business name, start a website, and I can grab a couple products, take pictures of them, and actually see if anyone would buy these items, right? And so it was the simplest way to test this market because and the basic idea was I always say to everyone, always had this idea of really wanting to be sustainable in terms of sustaining our community and our cultures. And so a big part of the work originally stemmed from that dream. And it was like from that dream, thing I remember the most was just the joy and happiness on those little girls' faces. And so, how, as a brand, one, can we recreate that? How can we show Indigenous youth that they are valued and loved and cared about? And originally that night from that dream, I woke up and I was like, I'm going to start a foundation for a scholarship fund in my grandmother's name. And I had like all of these big ideas. And then, met with some business advisory boards, and they're like, you can't start a foundation and a business at the same time. So find organizations that you can support. So began the process of us working with the First Nation Child and Family Caring Society. Since then, several more organizations that we give in-kind donations to, and we give cash donations to the First Nation Child and Family Caring Society. But that was just the beginning, and in reality, we didn't start this to start another beauty brand. We really started it as a way to create awareness about, our communities and what things that they were going through, and as a platform to empower Indigenous kids. And we've never really left that mission and vision. So today, our mission and vision is helping every Indigenous kid on the planet see and feel their value in the world. Will we craft sustainable color cosmetics?
Well, you spoke of your grandmother. Obviously, she had a huge impact on you and your family, and when you're speaking about generational trauma, do you find that when you're going to these board meetings, or you're going to, you're pitching something to, I don't know, an investor, whatever you do as a business owner, how much harder is it starting this brand as an Indigenous woman? Like how, like what, I'm curious as to the barriers that you have found yourself facing as an Indigenous woman business owner.
In reality, I think I never tried to like look at myself that way. I always kind of just entered this with like, I am just another woman in business. So there's that issue in itself, which we know is huge. Like if you and early on, it's so funny, you're not looking at the stats about who's going to invest in you. You're still just trying to figure out like the day-to-day things. So like, and especially as an early stage startup, you're just trying to figure out how to get a product, how to maybe get a unique box made so it doesn't look like all the other private label brands, and add some color and sort of culture through the branding and all those sorts of things. So I was never looking at it like, I'm an Indigenous woman, this is going to be really hard. In reality, yeah, there's so many barriers that we face. I know specifically it's funding, it's money. Like every day I'm like, oh my goodness, if we were to do this thing that I really want to do, I'm like, and we can't because it's going to cost, a couple $1 million. So that's just like, and those are the bigger problems that I have now. Early on, I was like, how am I going to pull together like $2,000 to put in this order for these liquid lipsticks that we really, really want to launch? So it's just, I think, same problems as we grow, but just at different stages. And I know for many, many of us, it's funding and maybe being taken seriously too, as you enter spaces and conversations with people. But that's where I really just had to pull up my socks, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to learn this industry inside and out, and I'm going to be able to have a conversation with somebody in beauty about ingredients and from the raw perspective and the resources of where those things come from and supply chain. And then, when it comes to investing, I really wanted to do my best to learn as much as I possibly could about how are we ever going to be profitable, because that's what an investor wants to hear. I knew I didn't have to like study spreadsheets because those are things I absolutely hate doing. But it's just sort of like figuring out how you're going to get someone to pay attention to you, and maybe learning those things that in a way that you could connect with that person that would be the one to help you.
I should mention at this point that you did announce on your Instagram that your products will be available at Sephora, which is I'm it's just huge. I mean, tell me how that happened.
I'm still asking myself that same question. So I don't know if I can tell you. I know it's been a ton of work. So from that moment when we realized, like, look, okay, we're using this private label company product. It's clear that people were interested. So many people would buy our products because based on sort of our mission, that worked out really well. And the manufacturer that we were working with does do a great job. They're just not focused on um, uh, the clean movement is a movement. It's also, I'm always say clean in quotes when I'm talking to our community because it's so unregulated and defined. So I always say we were working hard to meet the clean standards based on Sephora's requirements from the beginning. Because and what we then in turn have done now that we employ a full-time chemist is we're actually creating Cheekbone's own clean standards, or what we feel is the safest and the best products for our customer. And so that's what every brand really, really has to do. But it was from that journey going, okay, what is the other option? Like, I am not a chemist, literally failed grade 10 chemistry. And how how am I going to figure out how to make this lipstick? And so some manufacturing facilities like the private label will make everything for you, and then you work with ones that actually take your formulations and fill them. But then you also then run into the concern of they will share your formulations with other brands as well. So learning so much about that, and so that's one of the reasons at the end of 2019 we set out to work on our plan of then grow from that space where we're using the private label, then went to the contractors basically for everything. And then we were like, let's just go and do this in house. How can we figure that out? So that's where we are now. We built a lab last year at the beginning of this year, hired a full-time chemist so that we can do in-house manufacturing. So that's sort of the stage where we are even. So not even just growing to a brand, lots of brands are in Sephora. Many of these brands don't make their own stuff in-house. That is super rare. And so what that means in our space is if you're not controlling your own manufacturing, like we've gotten super creative and like we're going to shift a bunch of these to marketing. We know we're going to put a lot of those dollars to donation product, but it gets super expensive. And how can you truly be a sustainable brand? Well, it meant that we'd have to, get our own manufacturing facility up and running. And so that's the sort of the place that we're in now. We haven't fully mastered that because I mean, I've never built a manufacturing facility before. That's a new project that we'll be starting on and completing. And so I think, and I fully am aware that Sephora believes in us, but they believe in brands that are innovative and really moving the needle when it comes to research and development. And we're a voice in a space, especially in our country here, that is desiring to be heard, and our communities are asking for that. And so Sephora made a decision over the last, I think it was last year, that they would um, have a percentage of BIPOC beauty brands in on their shelves by a certain date. And we gratefully and fall into that BIPOC category. And so we're really, really excited to work with them in the upcoming year.
Well, it's I mean, it's just huge, right? It's when you had a dream, right? And that was like that's what's just so beautiful about it is that that was the spark that started for you, right? That and look at you. You like 2016 feels like yesterday, right? I'm sure people think that you're an overnight success. That's not the case, obviously. This has taken you, I'm sure, you've logged thousands and thousands and thousands of hours.
Yeah, and the reality is, I've been really open and I've shared a ton about losing my brother to suicide in 2016. So like months before launching, we were actually going to launch in September, but that's when my brother BJ took his own life. And so that was just this, like, I can't even, the pain from that was horrific. And now when I look back, I just realized because he was actually a big part of so many conversations early on. Like, I'm like, what do you think? Like, should I be doing this? Like, I would talk to him about things from a cultural perspective because he grew up on our reservation. I grew up with my mom here in St. Catharines. And so he was very much connected to our community. All of my First Nations family is very traditional with ceremony practices. However, am not. It's just not I didn't grow up with those teachings, so it's nothing that I knew about. I'm getting to learn from people now, but it's nothing that I knew as much as my brother did, or my family. And so I would just like constantly be asking him so many questions, and um, I literally would like be like, "Is this okay? Should we do this?" And when he so great feedback from him, and he just looked at me the last time that I saw him alive, which was in May of 2016, and when I was visiting in Kenora, or it's Sioux Narrows, which is just outside of Kenora, Ontario, and he said, "Jen, this is amazing. Like I can't believe you're thinking about building this business, but it's about giving back to our kids." And he was a youth worker, and he said that our kids, they just need hope, and they need help to show them how to do these things, right? Like that would be great if they had all that. And so I just, those words literally for the last 5 years like have been running through my mind. I don't honestly, sometimes I stop and I'm like, would I be here without losing him? Because I was working an insane number of hours, like, and it I'm a therapy expert, I feel like, because 'cause I've been there so long and for so many topics over my whole life. But losing him, not only did I give up this addiction, and then, you gotta learn to live life on life's terms without your substance. Then I lose my brother. I have no coping mechanism. So I just like, again, if you study the addict's brain or do any research on the brain, I was replacing pain, number one, as and using it as fuel from losing my brother BJ. And my addictive brain obviously was just so focused on cheekbone, cheekbone, cheekbone. It helped me heal. It really has. I'm learning to have more balance. But because I didn't share this, for 3 years, I knew I would have to work my full-time job still in sales and marketing. So I was doing that 2017, 18, and 19. And finally, in August of 2019, when our investor Raven Capital came in, I was able to quit and take a salary. And I literally collapsed after that because that was just nuts, working 100-hour work weeks. Like I would work all day and then come home at night, spend some time with my family, and then by like 9, 10 o'clock, back in the basement doing all the cheekbone orders and all of that stuff till like 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, get up and do a couple things, and then go to my day job and do that all over again, and weekends working on it. Um, so do I
Wow.
recommend that? No, it's totally
No.
not sustainable. It's not what I encourage people to do, but it's what I had to do. Like
Yeah.
nobody's gonna invest in this idea that I had with no experience at all in the beauty industry. They would have laughed me out of their offices, right? So I had to prove myself, and I did. And I'm grateful that we had some great investment partners
Mm.
come our way.
Yeah. Okay, so you spoke of the First Nations Child and Family Caring Society, and as a place that you love to give back. I know there's some sounds in the background. You have some work happening at your house. So if anybody hears that, that's what it is, and it's okay because this is real life. This is what working women do, right? There's all kinds of things happening. Um, we what we like to do on this podcast is ask our guests to pick a charity that has special meaning to them so that we can give back for you giving us your time to have this conversation. So TELUS will be giving $500 to the First Nations Child and Family Caring Society. And I mean, you did mention them earlier, but tell me why this place is important to you.
So really early on, that advice from the advisory board, go find an organization you can support. I like struggled with that because I'm like, who do you trust? You hear all these, oh, this isn't a not for profit, and but that most of the money goes to the the stakeholders or the board or whatever. And so I'm like, oh my goodness, this is going to be so hard to find somebody that we believe in. And literally saw Cindy Blackstock on the news, and she had just won the Human Rights Tribunal case against Canada, is saying that yes, Canada does treat First Nations children unfairly. And I was like, "Wow, who is this woman?" And out of one quick Google search, found her, found this organization that she has, built and she's the executive director of, and then found Shannon's story. And I remember hearing about Shannon Costachuan's story years ago, and then I was just, once I went into that search and found out more about her, and I'm like, "How appropriate that we support Shannon's dream because it was for, just equal rights for Indigenous kids and their education." And I constantly think about my nieces and nephews who go to school on reservation and what they've told me about their schools. And it's not great, libraries are really not libraries, no extracurricular activities. I think of going to my kids' school here in Niagara and seeing tons of unused computers and boxes down the hallways. And my nephew was saying they had like two, and one was broken at the time, and they're in his school and when he was in grade 8. And I'm just like, how can we foster a love for learning if kids don't have a great place to go to school? So that it just made sense for us to support them. And this young lady sadly lost her life in a car accident and all of this work that she tried to do. And so I know her family does a wonderful job of keeping her legacy alive. And we're just grateful to be able to support them.
Oh, that's amazing. Well, they will be getting $500 in your name. So thank you. Thank you for your time
Oh, thank you.
for talking to us. So let's talk about looking forward, Cheekbone Beauty and looking into the future if we can. You talked about sustainability. You talked about, we talked about Sephora and how great this is, and tell me what your I mean, it's hard for me to ask you now what your big dream is because I would think it would be to get into, a retailer like Sephora, but let's put that aside because that's now happened for Cheekbone. That is something that's happening. What are some of your other dreams for this company that you've started?
Yeah, so it's always been this concept of reach, and I have always thought like global reach. Indigenous kids are global, Indigenous people are global, and all of our communities have all been impacted negatively by colonization in some shape or form. And so the whole idea of just our box being on a shelf in a Sephora anywhere in the world, and someone could is an Indigenous kid and sees that brand and understands that one of their people, someone who's been through something like them, understands them accomplish something like this. And so it's always been that idea of presenting to our kids, if you see it, you can be it. And so I've never met or seen, I guess, any other hugely widely known successful Indigenous entrepreneurs on a global scale. And I feel like that's what our kids need is, and again, this goes back to my brother because super, super funny guy. And I would get like text messages or DMs from him anytime anybody native ever did anything awesome. Like that excited him so, so much. He'd be like, whether it's an NHL person, actress, actor, whatever, or like business people. I remember him sending me there was something about when Manitoba Mucklucks went into I think it was like a global retailer. So and knowing he was just so excited knowing that they were being sold all over the world. So everything that we I've done here obviously relates back to these really personal family stories and how I feel like if all Indigenous kids had that visual of seeing one of themselves succeed, I always say succeed as perceived because I don't mean everybody has to go out and build a giant global brand either, right? But it just fuels people to believe that it's possible.
What do you say to people who think about makeup and they think, well, like, all these other makeup companies, they're for everybody. They're not just for, they're for everybody. Like, why do we am I like do you know what I'm trying to get to here? It's
Yep.
like, well, why do we need an indigenous brand? Like it's the doesn't everybody use the same makeup?
Yeah, and it that is a great question. So I'm wondering if it's being framed as because we early on would get all of the messages like, "I'm white, can I use your makeup?" Right? And it's that idea of is this just for Indigenous people? Well, no, because we had big plans from the beginning that we have a voice in on a larger scale. That was the goal, and really wanted to like connect. There's obviously, it's evident there's a big disconnect from Indigenous and non-Indigenous, and it's two separate. How do we work together? How do we, really just show love and kindness at the end of the day? That's really what we're about. And that means anyone can wear our products. But the most interesting factor is about in beauty is Indigenous people come in every color and shade and tone as well. And I mean size, but I'm thinking skin tone right now. So you could be like from Nova Scotia and Mi'kmaq, and you're like super fair because your ancestors were fair. And even Inuit are like without sun, they're super fair. It's like winter a lot of the time. There's like, right? So there's their actual skin tone is very, very fair. And unique, and then we have our Afro Indigenous community. So it doesn't
Yeah.
matter. It's like our brand was created for everyone, just like most beauty brands really are. Um, and it's you can see though that the problem I felt in the beauty industry was that idea of marketing or lack of representation. So you're not seeing faces where you feel like you can connect. Like I grew up, I'm gonna like reflect my age here, where it is like the Christy Brinkleys of the world. And I'm like, I don't look like Christy Brinkley, but that's a lot of times what the model is looked like for a lot of beauty brands for many, many years, or during the 90s when it was like the supers. And I mean, we did have Naomi Campbell, but I can't remember, and I've been trying to search this, if she ever did any beauty campaigns in the
Yeah, I
early
don't
days. And I don't
know.
remember her doing those. Like it was always Cindy or Claudia, right? And so
Yeah.
you're
Yeah. Oh,
like,
I
do
listen, we must be around
I
from the same era at least, because I'm very familiar with, Cheryl Tiegs, all of them, right? They were all these beautiful, beautiful, tall blonde beauties, right? That
Yeah.
yeah, you're right, right? When you think about what we grew up watching,
Mhm.
it
And
was,
that even we could
yeah.
move that conversation to body messaging as well, right? Like it's those
Well, yeah, then we
messages.
entered the Kate Moss era.
Yeah. Yes,
Which
yes.
really didn't work out for me.
No, me neither.
So, yeah, and I think that that's maybe you're right, like, the disconnect for people, right? It's not like, "Oh, well, everybody has to have their own makeup company," and it's no, it's for everybody, but it's about who we're seeing it on, who the representation that we have in everything. And I think that that's where people really have a misunderstanding of what representation means.
Yeah.
You
And
want your kids
it's
to turn on the TV and see something that reflects
yes.
their reality.
Yes, for sure. And it's just when I'm thinking about the customer, it's almost that idea of that we have a different voice from an Indigenous perspective as well, which is really unique in the sense that I think um, the world is ready to hear and accept and understand that, our ancestors really were focused on land, the environment, ecosystems long before the science world really highlighted the importance of that in our space right now. And so I feel like there's this connection that we get to share now. And I think it's a great time in history for those things to happen as well.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I mean, is a sustainable, clean beauty product, does it not make sense to come from the original keepers of the land and the original, like, you know what I mean? It's kind of
I
where it should have
agree.
started.
And I agree. And then now that I'm in this space and have had sat in some conferences and platforms, and you hear many non-Indigenous brands talk about them going into the Amazon and sourcing these incredible
Mm.
ingredients, and, where one brand literally stated that the indigenous people couldn't figure out how to do that for themselves. So they, of course, were there to guide them and show them. And I was just like, I'm like, okay, that's, give people the opportunity to prove. to prove that they are capable of taking care of themselves. And so there's a lot of room for us in this space as Indigenous people to actually be the ones to share Indigenous stories, specifically when it comes to plants and ingredients and raw actives. And we should be the ones telling you what happened thousands of years ago with those actives, not other brands.
Yes. Yes, yes, yes. I love this. And I know that there are, a lot of women who, and young girls really, that look to you now. And, your excitement and charisma just like bursts out, Jen. And it's just so refreshing to have this conversation with you, and you're an open book, right? And you're willing to share. I really appreciate it. And I have a whole new perspective on Cheekbone Beauty. I really do. Then I mean, I'm on your Instagram all the time looking, and it's beautiful, and I love everything that's on there. But now speaking to you and hearing your story and your love for what you do, right? This is what will make you the big success that you already are. It's just your love for what you do. So I really appreciate you spending time with us today.
Oh, thank you. I love talking about this stuff. So
It's
certainly great.
Okay, so listen, the launch of Cheekbone Beauty is happening for Sephora Canada next year. Is that right?
No, it's later this year. So
It's
it's
later this
happening
year
this
now.
year. Yes.
Okay, so
Yeah.
we
We
will be
don't have
looking for that.
exact dates yet, but I know that it's this year. Yeah. We're
Right. And
working
so, and
vigorously
obviously,
behind the scenes to make this all
all
happen.
the information is always on your Instagram and Twitter, which is at Cheekbone Beauty, and your website is cheekbonebeauty.com.
Correct.
And your Instagram is Cheekbone Warrior, right?
I am not as active as I probably should be, and my team tells me because it's just
Because you're kind of busy.
yeah, I'm like, I wish I could be there, but I'm trying to show people that I was a real person, that's
Yeah.
what we're supposed to do on social media. So I'm like, I'm
Yeah.
real, I have a family. So every once in a while I remember on like a Saturday, I'm like, here's me and my family, or here's what we're doing, right? It's hard when you're not like that, I guess. Just
Well,
avid influencer on the socials. I need to
yeah.
get better.
We know that you're working hard, and we'll follow you along on Cheekbone Beauty. So again, Jen, thank you so, so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to another episode of TELUS Talks with Tamara Taggart. Be sure to subscribe so you can join us every Tuesday for another conversation. You can also check out our website, telus.com/podcast, and subscribe to our YouTube channel at TELUS Talks.